Hi everyone, I'm Samanthia Clarke. I'm an anti-anxiety coach, and this is my niche mate. Anna, introduce yourself, please. I don't need to speak for
Hello,
you.
everyone. My name is Anna. What I'm doing is I'm helping women to thrive in life, to get past obstacles, and I'm here located on the west coast of Canada. And my business name is Unlimited You Coaching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, that's why I should explain myself a little bit more in how that I say niche mates, because we both support women, and
Yes.
Anna and I have worked together before. We've done these sessions before. We've even done live sessions, and we decided that it would be great for us to do this on a more regular basis. So we will be having these sessions once a month, and we'll be finding different well, actually, we both sent out a list of subjects to our followers, and they told us what they would like us to discuss. And so that's how we've come up with some different subjects that we're going to be discussing over the next however long, but at least once a month. But today we are focusing on a book, a very, very famous book. The book is so famous, there's like Facebook clubs about it. It's actually, it's more of a reference book, and it's called The Women Who Run with the Wolves. And what's that name? And it's by
author's name?
Yeah,
Clarissa Pinkola Estes, PhD.
Yes, exactly. I always forget that. But Anna's going to explain a little bit more about the book and why we're focusing on it. So yeah.
Yes. Almost every woman I know has read this book. It's a very important book to read. And what attracted me to this book is the title, because it's very unique and it's very provocative. What does Clarissa Pinkola Estes would like to achieve with this book is to help women to reconnect with their instinct, with their wild instinctual nature. And so she spent some time with wolves, examining their lives, looking at them, how they act, how they respond to challenges in their life, how they support each other. And she has found a lot of parallels there. There's a lot of beautiful intercultural myths, fairy tales, and stories she weaves into the book. And a lot of those stories, we know, like a lot of us know, we live on different continents, and there's also different versions can be different versions of each story in different cultures. But yes, it's wonderful, because as you will be reading through this book, you will remember, and okay, this is something I've read when I was 7, 8, or 9, or maybe even younger. So she what she does is she takes those stories and is analyzing them in a very deep, profound way, and is finding a lot of clues for women to support them.
Yeah, because she uses fairy tales, isn't it? They're mainly fairy tales that
Yes.
she analyzes, isn't it? So yeah, it's very like the deepness. I feel like that book is a book how that is. I think of it more of a reference book, because it's like it's something I think you could read it and then you have to read it again, and then you'll discover something new again, because it's so deep. Like it's such. Sometimes I want somebody to interpret it all for me, because I find it really deep, the things that she said, but it's so it's really interesting. It's such a good book. I remember when I read it the first time, I was absolutely fascinated by the stories and the links that she makes of what it means. Like you might read something and it will just be like, oh, there's a running river, but then she'll change it into the running river actually is a metaphor for your life, or you know what I mean. It's just really it's really good the way that she does it. So it's a very fascinating book like that. Yeah.
Yes, and it's a book you come back to again and again.
Yeah.
The message you received, maybe first time you read it may be different than the message you receive when you read it for the second or third time. It has been true for me, at least.
Exactly.
But yeah, so the story that's coming back to me again and again is the little match girl. So I think most of us do know this story. And so yeah, let me give you a refresher of the story. So there was this little girl child who had neither mother nor father. She lived in a dark forest, and the winter came, and it was very cold, and unfortunately she didn't have much, didn't even have shoes, so her toes started to turn blue. Her thought was so thin that she could see through it. So she has learned that at the edge of the forest, there was a village, and she could go there and buy matches for a half penny and sell them for a full penny. So she did that, and she wandered the streets, begging others to buy matches from her. But unfortunately, no one has paid attention to her. So one evening, she sat down and was saying to herself, "Well, I could strike the matches and warm myself." And she didn't have kindling, and she didn't have wood. So we know what that means, right? When you light a match without kindling a wood. Yet she decided to do it in a hope to warm herself. And for a moment, when she struck the first match, it seemed like the cold disappeared, the snow disappeared, and she saw herself in this beautiful, warm, cozy room with a ceramic stove where heat emanated from. And the air was wavy from the heat. She just felt like she snuggled up to the stove, but all of a sudden the stove went out, and then there she was in the cold again. And then she struck another match, and and then as she was striking the matches, she would find herself for a second in those beautiful environments where she was comforted, where she felt warm, where she felt taken care of. And obviously those moments would disappear. And then I think the last match she struck was, she saw in the light of the match her grandmother, who comforted her and took her up into the sky, and so they disappeared. And on the next morning, the girl was found still and gone. And I remember when I read it for the first time, I think I was 8 or 9. The feelings I had was empathy, sympathy, and sadness.
Mm.
And it's interesting. And then when I read it as a grown-up, I had much stronger feelings. My feelings were like frustration and anger, and I just wanted to go and shake her. Wake up, do something. There is many choices, you have many choices. So that's how it evolved for me, the understanding of it. Do you remember when you read it first time, and
it
came up for you?
The thing is, I don't recall reading Little Match. That's what's the full title? Is it Little Matchstick Girl, or is it Little Match Girl?
The Little Match Girl.
Little Match Girl. I don't recall reading that as a child. I don't recall. The first time I think I read it was in this book here. This story, I don't
really
recall.
Okay.
I don't recall reading that as a child. So it's interesting, isn't it? Like, it's interesting.
Yes.
I genuinely, unless I've forgotten, but I don't think I read it until I was an adult.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So not so much in the childhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, stories are so rich in messages, right? And they come to us, and they evolve. Well, what Clarissa Pinkola Estes says is that this story is about the lack of focus, lack of nurture, and where it can lead us. What can happen when we lose focus, and when we lose when we no longer in the real world, instead we are in a fantasy world. I keep thinking, what is it about this being in this fantasy world, what's so attractive? Because I'm sure we've all been there before, right? Fantasizing about about different things. So what do you think is so attractive that so many of us do that and go about life in a trance?
Yeah, so I feel like the way that she links it is how that because she basically says how that every time that the little girl strikes the match, that's the equivalent of her being in a fantasy world, isn't it? Because does she link it in a way? Because that's the thing. Is she trying to say how that because she never had any kindling, and never had any real wood to burn, so the fact that she's lighting the match is like she's not being realistic? So is that what she was trying to say? Like every time you strike the match, you're not being realistic, you're not facing reality, and you're sort of like using this match to like escape from the reality of what's happening to you. Is that what that was
That's
about?
what I think. That's what I
Yeah.
think. And this is a symbol of and to me it's also a symbol of giving away your power.
Right.
I mean, of
Right.
course it's a fantasy, because how much warmth can a match give you, right?
Yeah.
And also thinking about, this is also a beginning of a new life, maybe, because she can do so much more with those matches, but then she just gives it away.
Yeah. So she just squanders it. So
right.
I think how that a good example of that when it comes to women, and I would say how that this was me in my 20s. So I think a good example of that when it comes to women is the fantasy of having the husband and the children and focusing on that and not focusing on trying to develop yourself. So you live in the fantasy. So sometimes you get into relationships. So let me see. You get into relationships with men, and the reality of what you're living with the man is very different. And then so because it's not, so you fantasize a lot, isn't it? So you do a lot of you fantasize a lot when in order to escape the reality of what's really happening. So I think how that's a good example of like I said, that was me in my 20s. But I always remember my mum had a friend. I remember being very young. My mum had a friend, and she had 3 children with her partner at the time. And I was a child. I must have been a teenager myself at the time. And I remember she had 3 children with this man. So it was a proper established relationship. They weren't married, but they'd been, the children were like, I'm talking like 14, 15. So they'd been together a significant amount of time. And I remember she used to absolutely devour romance books. And I remember thinking to myself as a child, thinking, why do you need to read romance books if you've got if you've got a partner there? And I remember I was confused, I was baffled by that. But to me, she springs to mind because it's an example of you're not really living, you're living in fantasy there, isn't it? Your reality isn't. Do you see what I mean? That's what springs to mind is my mum's friend that she used to. I always remember used to think, how can you be like, to me in my naivety, I guess, because I was young, my thought was you shouldn't have to read those romance books because you're supposed to be living it with your partner. But obviously she wasn't. And I as I've gotten older and I've become privy to more adult information, I'm very aware that she wasn't living that life. But I think it's a good example of you living in fantasy, and not so I suppose another thing with the book is how that you sort of like, does she say how that is she sort of like use it as an example that you sort of like you stagnate as well because you're living in fantasy, you don't actually do things or something, isn't it? She's saying
that's right. So she's saying that there is the choices are many, but we need to when we live in the fantasy, we are stuck.
Right.
We are stuck, right? And they give us a comfort. They soothe us maybe in a certain way. That's why we do it. But yes, they don't invite us to take action.
Yeah. But Anna, how about you in terms of your examples? Do you have any examples of this for yourself
Oh,
or
do I
from
ever?
clients?
Do I ever? Yeah, I think I have this big one from my own life,
Okay.
you know, where there was a major transition in my life. I was in my mid-30s. I lived in Germany then, and you know, and then I found my to-be husband. I met my to-be husband in Europe. However, he was from Canada. So, you know, we decided that that it's going to be me who will move to his country,
Mm-hmm.
because he just loves his country so much. And that you know, he couldn't imagine living in Europe. But you know, a big part of me was very, very open and curious.
Because you're a traveler anyway. Where
I
you was
am a
living,
traveler.
you'd
I have
already
a little bit of,
traveled. Yeah.
that's it. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I lived in different countries. So a big part
Yeah.
of me was very, very excited about it. Yet there was, you know, that's a huge change, right? That was a huge change. And I found, and also at that point in my life, I feel like I just, like I was lacking something, like something was just not right with, you know, with the career I have chosen, and with that something was missing, you know. And usually now, as a person who has spent a lot of time working on herself, on her stuff, I know that it's important to look into what's there, you know, what's missing. It must be inside, certainly not outside. But I think I used this, you know, this. It really excited me, this you know, this moving to Canada, you know, another country, and it's just all the other problems I had will disappear, and I will just have a beautiful new life.
Yeah.
Obviously, it could not be. I could not have been more wrong about that. And it certainly was a very, very good move for me, and I'm very happy I did this. But it also made me realize how important it is to make decisions like that with awareness, with being clear on what that means. You know, love is very important, but you know, there's so many other aspects in life, and then it's very challenging to move to a different culture, move to a different continent. And not that I have not been, not that I haven't thought of that, but I think I was like mesmerized by this idea of new country, my love, and this is gonna fix everything. So I think that's my example. And
Right.
and again, I will come back to this, that we need, when we make decisions in our life, awareness, consciousness, and focus, you know, where for myself, I think it's very important to just understand that we are on a certain path, and that we will do it step by step in a, you know, in a clear way, and not in a not fantasizing, you know, not being in not like doing it in a sleepy way, you know. It's just like Clarissa is saying, wake up, you know, wake up to reality, and live the life which is in front of you, and not
because I also took that story as, I think the way that she was explaining it was also that we put off things that we, because I remember her saying how that in there, like the match is like the metaphor of like, I'll do this when, I'll do that when, you know, like I'll start this business when. That's how it manifests in women's lives, isn't it? Like, I'll start this business when this happens, or I'll do this thing when this thing happens, isn't it? So she was saying, I remember that bit sticking in my mind, as that was she was trying to say about the fantasy as well of, or was that the bit where she was trying to demonstrate where we're just in comfort, like when we're sitting, like we sit in our comfort, like we don't want to stretch ourselves. I don't know if that's the bit.
I think it's this, about this, okay, let's wait for the perfect moment.
Right.
you know, which obviously
Right.
never arrives.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
Which
Okay.
never arrives, right?
Yes.
Because when the children leave the house, then I don't know, I may become sick,
Yes.
or
Whatever.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right. Okay. So she's saying about wait. That bit is to say like to wait for the like we try to wait for the perfect moment and then we don't get things done. But and so in yeah. Okay. That makes sense. In your life, do you ever see in your life that you've ever can you see that you've done it in your life when you've been waiting for a perfect moment to do something and putting
yes,
something off? Yeah.
yes, yes, exactly. You know, thinking like, oh, I don't have enough time in a day,
Mm,
right? So not giving,
mm,
I guess, enough meaning to, well, there's a half an hour there, you know, I could do something then. I could start a little, just do a first little step to, you know, to accomplish a project. No, I
mm.
have to have, 3 hours, and I have to have a perfect space, and it has to be, I have to have a perfect computer to work
Yeah.
on, etc. I do remember that, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a fantasy as well.
Hmm.
But what I would like also to talk about a little is the lack of nurture. How,
Right.
you know, this was a very, very important insight for me at least, and I would like to read that, what she writes about the difference between nurture and comfort. The difference
Yes,
between
please.
comfort and nurture is this: if you have a plant that is sick because you keep it in a dark closet and you say soothing words to it, that is comfort. If you take the plant out of the closet and put it in the sun, give it something to drink, and then talk to it, that's nurture.
Yes, there. Yeah, I remember that bit. Yeah, it's
Right?
very. Yeah.
And so, you know, soothing, comfort, and I guess that's also what the grandmother does for her. You know, she just takes her and comforts her and reaches out to her. Beautiful. You know, there is certainly times in life when soothing words are important. You know, when we are in times of, when we experience sadness, when we grieve. Yes, I want a friend to comfort me, but I do not want my friends to comfort me when I'm lost, when I
Mm.
when I lost focus, when I
Hmm.
start walk sleepy in my
Hmm.
day, when I'm in the fantasy world. I want my friends to tell me, you know, it's, hey, you wake up, you wake
Hmm.
up, and you just, you know, that's not the path you wanted to be on, that's the path you wanted to be on, and let me remind you on that, and how can I help you with that? So that's
Hmm.
this, you know, putting the, to me, putting the plant into the sun, and giving it light, and nurture it.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms, so what in terms of the book, what is she saying is how that is she saying how that we soothe ourselves too much and we don't nurture ourselves enough? Is that what she was saying? Is that what is that plant metaphor? Is it in relation to ourselves or is it in relation to others? How others deal with us?
I think what the angle she's looking at from is more of environment. You know, like
Mm,
she's saying that the magic girl is not in a good environment. People don't care. So leave
right.
this environment if that's the environment you're in, right? So
Right.
if people don't appreciate your art, your work, your,
Right.
right, your
Right.
vision.
Yeah.
So obviously, as she's trying to sell the matches, no one is paying attention. So
Mm,
that's exactly it. You know, find an environment where you get this nurture, where you get this support. I think
right.
that's what he's trying to say, and what he's trying to encourage
Mhm.
a woman to do.
And
Um,
women are notorious for remaining in environments that aren't healthy for them. Absolutely
mhm,
notorious because as women we're socialized to be caregivers, and a lot of our self-esteem is built on
mhm.
giving care and showing how that we're the one that can be relied on, and things along those lines. So it's a very good metaphor because we are absolutely notorious for just remaining in environments that are not healthy for us. Like, we put others before us, don't we? We normally put others needs above our own, and so we can end up in environments that, you know, aren't good for our needs. So it's a very good metaphor, actually. And what that plant analogy, I recently, funny enough, this week I learned the term ruinous empathy. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, I have not.
I had never heard of that. So I was in a business meeting, and the person I was speaking to, have you heard of ruinous empathy? And it's basically when you are too empathetic. So your empathy actually ruins, you know, it's actually ruinous to the person. So what we was discussing about, like, you know, like, when you're a manager, for example, you're managing staff or something, and you become friends with the member of staff, and so you have too much empathy for them, but actually they, in that environment, they don't actually need empathy. They need somebody who's going to, and like what you were saying, if you're sleepwalking, you want a friend who's not going to, like, soothe you. That's what it was reminding me of, the term ruinous empathy. So yeah, it's interesting that I'm sort of like learning, you know, those two things in the same week, sort of thing. So that's really interesting. But in terms of our viewers, and you know, our followers who are watching us, what do we want them to think about, Anna, about, you know, having heard this? What do we think, how that is, you know, good for them to try and focus on?
Well, I loved what you have just shared. It's very interesting and very insightful. And it just weaves so nice into the you know, into the story.
Yeah.
Yes, we would like to leave our audience with some food for thought.
Yes.
Yes, I was thinking of, you know, of questions we would like to, you know, like prompts for everyone. I think the number one is the nurture. How do you, how each of you nurtures, you know, your dreams, projects, ideas? How do you do that? How much attention do you give it to? How much priority do you give it to?
Yeah.
I think that would be something I would love for, you know, for everyone to think of. And yeah, and it's probably also in line with the first question, is looking into what prevents us. So it's like looking deeper into that first question, what prevents us from not giving our dreams a high priority? You know, what is it? You know, why do we think it has to be put on a back burner, and then the project of you know, of someone else, you know, whoever that is, can be your child, your partner, your boss. Why is their project put on first burner? That's the questions.
I think they're really good questions, and I think they're really important for you to really sit down. So it'd be good for, you know, as women, for you to really sit down and think about, you know, those, that is very important. Those are very important questions. Why do you put and prioritize other people's projects ahead of your own? Like, you really need to think about what is something that you've been meaning to do, that you've been putting off, that you've been fantasizing about it, you know, trying to get it perfect before you start. These are very good questions. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I hope, as we're coming to an end of our meeting, thanks so much for the time, Samanthia. Thanks so much for this beautiful discussion. I hope.
Thank you, Anna.
I hope it provided some good insights for everyone, and we will be back with you in next month.
That's right.
Yeah, would love to hear your comments. Please comment under the recording, and see you next time.